Hey, what's up? Yin here, and today I'd like to talk about this As24, and these come with 24 drivers. Yep, a lot of drivers, 12 on each side, and on top of that there are two versions. One version comes with 8 different switches, tuning switches, meaning you can actually change the sound on these earphones. And the other version doesn't come with any switches. The retail price for this is $100 for the non-tuning switches, and the other one with the tuning switches is $114. And if you are interested, do check out the unaffiliated link in the description below. Right, so in this video, I'm going to go through the design, build quality, the accessories, fit and comfort, specifications, and my sound impression. Now this video will be time-stamped, so please feel free to skip to the different chapters. Right, so let's begin with the specifications. Comes in this box here, pretty typical of KZ boxes. The frequency range is 20 to 40,000 Hertz. Impedance without switches is 20 ohms, and with switches is 20 to 50 ohms. So it depends on what switch is up or down. And the sensitivity without switches is 112. So that's the specs. Comes with Starline ear tips. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with that. It also comes with this tuning pin, okay, and the typical KZ cable, right? So this is the, I think I don't need to go through that. So that's the accessories. Let me just put them one side. Right, so this is the IM. Let's talk about the IM. So it's quite a chunky boy. It's quite thick, right, and quite huge. Obviously, you need to put 12 different drivers in there. But I mean, in terms of the fit, it fits my ear, but it is huge. It's a huge IM. The faceplate itself, it's got a pretty nice design. I mean, it's a pretty mature design, as you can see. It's got some, I don't know what shape this is, a kite shape. Yeah, it looks like a kite shape, embossed in like acrylic kind of stuff with a faceplate. And then on the side, on the inside shell is acrylic, or is it resin? I think it's a resin. Yeah, feels like resin. And you got your tuning switches on the top here. Let me try and zoom in. So this is the tuning switches, and I can hardly see with my naked eye, but this is very, very small. So I wish that this tuning switch was a little bit bigger so I can see the numbers. So if you look carefully, there are numbers 1 to 4, and then there is on this side, so this side should be off. So this is the main tuning switch, and then you have your auxiliary tuning switch on the side here. Okay, so in total there are 8 tuning switches. Okay, and then the nozzle is pretty wide. It's not the typical narrow nozzle. Okay, and overall, yeah, it's a pretty standard KZ design in terms of the shell itself. Pretty nice. Let me just zoom out for you guys. Okay, so that is the design. I think design wise, yeah, it's pretty good. There's nothing much to complain about. In terms of fit and comfort, surprisingly fits my ear pretty well, goes into my ear pretty well as well. With the foam tips, it's actually pretty comfortable. It does jut out a bit from my ears, so it doesn't entirely go into my ear, but it doesn't give me any pain. That's something surprising. So pretty comfortable to wear as well. So it goes into my ears, and it doesn't really go all the way in, and it sits right outside, and it, yeah, fits me pretty okay. I wouldn't say it's a perfect fit, but it's pretty okay, and it's pretty comfortable to wear. No physical fatigue while I'm wearing this. So yeah, pretty nice. So in terms of seal, the seal is actually pretty good with the foam tips, but I've been using my own CP145s. With these, I find that, you know, they give me a better soundstage on my CP145. So I've been using the CP145, and yeah, it's actually a pretty good seal if you ask me. Next, let's talk about sound. So let me just bring out my graph. Alright, so this is the graph, but before I go into that, let's talk about drivability. Now, these are actually pretty easy to drive. I have no issues driving these earphones. I've used my iPhone, I've used all my DAPs, and I've been listening to my music at about 30 to 40%, especially on my M15S. And yeah, it's actually pretty easy to drive. And pairing these up, I actually prefer a more of neutral sounding DAP and DACs. So the dongle DAC that I use is M15, and this M15S for my Fio, and this the Shanling M0 Pro. So these are the DACs and dongles that I use with this, surprisingly. But yeah, that's what I like. And you may want something more fun, more musical, and then you can go with something like the iPods or the Sonys, okay, the Walkmans. And then for the dongles with the FC6, something more warm and more fun, then you might want to change the tuning switch, which I'll show you later what the switches do. Okay, so in terms of the source and what I recommend to play with would be something more balanced and neutral. But if you want fun, yeah, you can go with your phone if you want, but you just need to change the switches here. Right, so that's for drivability and the source. Now let's talk about the tuning switches. I didn't measure all the tuning. I mean, there are 200 and in total 256 different permutations, which I think is just crazy to measure all of them. So I measured the basic, right? So this is the basic, but let me just go through the different tuning and what the switches do, right? So for the main switch, the main top switch here, right, for 1 to 4, all right, the first switch, which is number 1, it gives the overall bass a boost, all right, the overall bass and the overall impedance a boost, okay. And 2, 3, and 4, it increases the bass from 20 hertz all the way to 200 hertz. So if you increase or you push number 2 up, it will just increase by 1 dB. You push number 3 up, together with number 3, you increase another dB. And if you have all the switches up, your bass is all boosted, okay, and that will give you a more fun and a warmer sound. And that's when you will use a player that is something warmer, or a DAC that's warmer, okay. And then for the auxiliary switches, which is on the side here, it changes the mids and the treble. So for switches 1 to 2 on the side here, it gives a boost. If you turn it on, it'll give a boost of up to 2 dB for the mids, okay. And if you turn on 3 and 4, it will give a boost of the treble up to 4 dB, okay. So yeah, so for the 1 and 2, the switches for 1 and 2, it adjusts the frequencies from 500 hertz all the way to 2000 hertz. And the switches from 3 to 4, it changes the frequency from 8000 hertz to 20,000 hertz, okay. Right, so that's the overall tuning switches. I mean, there's a lot of combinations that you can play around with, and that's where for those people who likes to tinker around with the switches, you'll find it fun, all right, to change your tuning. But what you see right here is actually the basic stock tuning or measurements which I did with all the switches off. Okay, now first let's talk about technicalities on these. And with 24 drivers, what I can say now is that it's got a very strong technical performance. Okay, it's got very clear resolution. It's at a level whereby it outshines a lot of IEMs at a price of $100. This is not cheap. I mean, it's $100, but with a very good performance. In terms of soundstage, it's wide. It's not the widest, but it's got a good overall stage. It's got sides. It's very wide to the sides. Not much to the front, but it's got good height as well, and sometimes goes to the back of my head as well. So overall, is a very holistic type of soundstage, and I appreciate the naturalness of the soundstage that this presents to me. In terms of sound separation and imaging, it's just so clear. There is no muddiness, there's no mix of instruments in a crowded track, and all the instruments are nicely imaged and identified in their respectful positions, especially orchestras. Violins, when they come in the track, it comes on this side. Vocals somewhere in the middle, some vocals on the side, and I can hear very clearly. Some of the drums, they're on the side. The snares and the kick drums are here, snares are here. It's all very clearly laid out. And the overall detail retrieval, it depends on what tuning switch you turn on or off. But for me, based on the stock, the details that is being retrieved is very clear. It's got all the nuances that I want in my track, and I can pick it up very clearly. Right, so as you can hear, technicalities on this is just fantastic. Okay, now tone and timbre. Now it depends again on what switches you have on or off. For me, I like it as it is, and with this stock tuning, right, the tone and timbre is actually pretty neutral to natural. Okay, and I like it. It's the note weight is not too heavy. In fact, it's pretty light. It's not too dry as well. It's not too thin as well. It's got a bit of warmth there. A bit of warmth. It's also not very warm to the point whereby it's overly heavy in terms of the note weight. So actually, it's a pretty nice balance, I would say, for me. Okay. As for the overall note weight, again, it depends on your tuning. So if you increase the bass, the note weight will become heavier. And with the reduction of the bass, with this stock tuning, I find it is actually quite thin on a lighter side as well, but not dry. Right? So that's for the tone and note weight. Now let's talk about the sound signature. So obviously, there are 256 different sound signatures that you can get from these earphones. But based on the stock, this is how it looks like. And in terms of the overall sound, I would say it's bass light. It's not for bass heads. And if you want more bass, you can increase it. And if you want more treble, you can increase it. So in terms of treble, it's also not for treble heads. Because it's a very smooth treble, and overall I would say this is actually a very nice and pleasing, and at the same time analytical listening type of experience. Right, so let's zoom into the different frequencies. Now for sub bass, has got good rumble, and it does not have that tactile and dynamic feel to it, but I can feel that rumble, and it's actually pretty immersive. It's quite firm as well, very clear. very clear rumble. It's a little bit on the lighter side. It's not, again, for bass hits, but it's a very nice immersive rumble. Okay. As for the mids is a bit more forward. I can feel more of the thump, more of a body to the thump itself, and the impact is actually pretty strong. But it's not a dynamic impact. It does not push the sound wave just like a dynamic driver. This is a balanced armature, so the sound is being pushed in a different way. So when I listen to the bass, not just the sub bass, in terms of the bass overall, it's actually a different type of bass impact. So but the impact is there, the slam is there, and it's immersive. It's just that it does not have that tactile feel to it, and it's actually pretty warm, if you ask me. It doesn't sound like a balanced armature, right? So for the mids actually is a pretty good balance, if you ask me, for male and female vocals. I'll talk about instruments later, but for male and female vocals, I feel that the mids on this actually is pretty good. Yeah, I can male vocals, they sound pretty engaging, and female vocals, they sound pretty bright and pretty energetic. So a pretty good balance in terms of male and female vocals. Obviously, it's not gonna make any one of each shine, but it's actually a pretty balanced mids. As for instruments, they are very, very clear, very detailed. I can pick up a lot of forwardness from the violins, the flutes, trumpets as well. And drums. Yeah, drums actually sounds really clear on this. So yeah, I like the mids on this. I wouldn't say this is mid-centric type of tuning, because they're still a little bit recessed. As you can see, the mid bass is actually still pretty forward. So yeah, the mids are pretty good, nice, well tuned. And for the treble, right, the gain to the treble is pretty good. It's got good energy. It's a little bit on the shy side, but it's not the brightest, it's not the most energetic, but good enough energy, right, to give me my engagement with the female vocals. At the same time, my cymbal strikes, hi-hats, and the shakers and the snares, pretty good bite, and yeah, it's pleasing to my ears. It's not offensive, it's not fatiguing as well. It's got good energy, but not a lot of energy whereby it's too much. So pretty good slope down here. I would say it's actually pretty tolerable type of treble. Okay, it's also not the most present. It's actually kind of recessed and dark, a bit of the darkish type of treble, and that's where it doesn't give me any sibilance or any shoutiness or any harshness. So it's a pretty smooth treble, and I like the treble actually. You know, it's not offensive at all, and non-fatiguing. I can listen to this for a very, very long period of time. Okay. And as you can see over here, the mid treble, where the presence is, where the overall brightness or the darkness is actually not sibilant. It dips down quite a bit here to make it a bit more non-offensive. At the same time, I mean, the trade-off is that it's not harsh, it's not bright. Okay, that's the trade-off. But yeah, it is, it gives a very smooth treble, and then it balance off and plateaus off right here and gives a very nice air, a pretty nice natural roll off for the treble. So cymbal strikes, hi-hats, they still have that pretty natural roll off, and in terms of the timbre, it's actually pretty natural sounding. It does have that little bit of the balanced armature timbre. In most pure balanced armature IEMs, I can hear just that little bit, but it's not very obvious, and yes, sounds pretty natural when it rolls off. Right, so that's the overall sound impression and the sound signature of this AS24. And for $100, I would say in terms of technicalities, what I like about this IEM is the technicalities. It does present a very good performance for technical side of it. In terms of tuning, I'm not a fan of all this tuning switches. I mean, I'm old, I can't see the tuning switches, and honestly it's a little bit of a hassle for me to remember all the different configurations. So I'm happy with just one tuning, and you know, if I want to change the style of my listening preference, I can just change my earphones. For $100, I would say, yeah, I mean, if you can afford it, this is actually a pretty good performer in terms of the technical part of it, and it sounds really good. For $100, it's actually, you know, pretty comparable with a lot of other IEMs that cost much more than this AS24. All right, so that concludes my overall review and impression of this KZ AS24. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and also please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So I hope you guys have a great day ahead, and I'll see you again in my next video. Cheers.